So today, as I said, I'm going to talk about student success and personalized learning, because we have been thinking about that for a while, and we've developed technologies that have been out for a while, and the results have been really promising. It looks like you can impact student success rather substantially with some of these technologies that are out there, including ours. And why would we care about this? Student success. We have a lot of successful students. Well, if you're like me, you get tired of seeing articles like this, where there's an appraisal of students' reading and science and math competencies, and we get compared to the world, and we're down there in 2013, 2012, number 27, just behind the Slavic Republic, as far as the performance of our students. Hard to read every day. Even if you don't buy this, if you think that maybe the PISA exam, which is the tool they use for assessing this, may not be relevant to what we're doing here in the US, this one's hard to look at too. We've seen plenty of this. Evidence that our students are emerging from secondary not really ready for college, that they just don't have the math and English skills they need to be successful. And the numbers are startling, and you may know these numbers. About half the students come out of high school not ready for college, math and English. In some places, the numbers are horrendous. Where I live in California in 2011, 85% of the students coming or getting into the community college system in California required college math remediation. 87%. Huge numbers. And I think the worst part of this story is that even when we identify students who need some help to get ready, we're having trouble getting them ready. The success rate is lower than any of us are happy with. So when I look at something like this, and you look at it nationally, what you'll be maybe not surprised to find is this is not just a regional problem or an individual school problem. This is a problem across the entire US, every place. And the numbers don't look a whole lot better from one place to the next. There's some really bad spots, but everybody in the nation, the best numbers we're seeing are maybe 30, 40% aren't ready in some states and some areas. So it's a problem. So what are you thinking about? When you see a problem that's this widespread, what do you think? Well, I'm starting to think that maybe it's a system problem. Maybe it's something about the way we are teaching systematically. The system itself may be part of the issue here. No matter how much resource we throw at this, how many ways we tweak it, may not be able to fix it. I see people shaking their heads. I'm not sure they're agreeing with me or disagreeing, but you're going to have a chance to jump in here. And so I'd like to get back and look at the system itself, because that's where I think I want to start with my thesis today. That if we look at the system, we may find reasons for why this may be the case in part. When did the US education system start? Well, the idea of having public education started with the folks that started the nation. It was part of the conversation right from the beginning. And as early as 1785, there was an effort to put dollars aside to start public education in the US. Unfortunately, it was only a few schools in the Northeast and in the East that happened. There just weren't enough dollars. And it lay without any evidence of progress for a long, long time. In fact, by about 1830, 1840, Horace Mann and others were complaining that we really needed public education to be something that all citizens could tap into. But nothing happened much until after the Civil War. And then, there goes my cane. And then after the Civil War, between 1870 and 1910, there was this huge increase in the number of public education institutions. It rose from only about 500 to more than 10,000 in a 40-year stretch. And thank you. And then by 1918, compulsory attendance regulations went into place, and the system we see today was more or less in place after World War I. If you went back to World War I and you walked into a classroom, you would recognize that it's something you're familiar with. So, what went on here? Why was there this huge increase in the number of schools in the US? Well, it came out of a couple of things that were going on back then. First was the Industrial Revolution, that there was a huge increase in the number of factories that were being built in the US as the US became industrialized. And that increase in factories made an increase of jobs, really good jobs, jobs that were good paying jobs, and they were attractive. So folks from inside the US and outside the US were coming to fill those jobs. In fact, between 1891 and 1910, there were more than 3.7 million immigrants into the United States. It was one of the biggest immigration events in the history of the nation. And those immigrants arrived to the US and were taking residence around these factories, mostly in the Northeast and in the Midwest, taking those jobs. And with them, there was huge pressure put on the social services systems, including public education. Now there weren't nearly enough places in schools for all the students that were arriving as children of these immigrants. So, not surprisingly, the way of dealing with that is to build more of them, and we did. We went from 500 to 10,000 schools in a short stretch of time. But there's also a confluence of other events. As I said, compulsory attendance came at about the same time during that same stretch, but also child labor laws were enacted about the same time. So all those things came together to put huge pressure on our systems. So the system we built back then was intended to deal with this tsunami of need, all these people that needed it. It had to get big and it had to get big fast, and it had to be efficient. It had to get people through the system in the most efficient manner possible. We had standardized curricula that were developed about the same time from non-standard curricula. We had textbooks that started appearing around those standard curricula about the same time. All these ways of regulating, normalizing, and standardizing were starting to pop up. And one of the things that popped up was letter grading. Prior to that, when a student was assessed, they were assessed individually. There was a paragraph written about where the student was performing within each topic. And it was done generally every semester, or more frequently actually, because even there weren't really semesters back then. This came out of the innovation of the time. This is an innovations conference, right? The innovation of that time was factory processes. And they were not only happening in factories, they're happening through society. And this is one of the places in which factory processes crept in. The logic of having something coming through an assembly line being graded and either being retained or taken off the assembly line and you start over. And that's what factory grading was. That's what this kind of grading was. If you got an A, B, C, D, you were being promoted. If you got an F, you're starting back over and redoing the curriculum. It was an innovation of the time, but it came with a price. Because while it works pretty well with products, it doesn't work so well with people. There's a price to be paid. So let's talk about that. In fact, when grading came along, this is how we did the distribution. This is a 1910 distribution of grading. 7% of A's and F's for every year class, for every cohort. 15% B's, 15% D's, and everybody else got a C. So that's the distribution. Now, you know that distribution changed about 1965 with the Vietnam War, and we have a whole lot more A's and B's, and that was for social pressure to do that. But the fact that we have these individualizations of A, B, C's, D's, and F's still is where the problem lay. Because let's think about this. If you look at a class in 1910, the classes got a lot bigger. One instructor, 50, 60 students. So in a class like this, how many F's would you have? About that many. And that's forced. You're going to have 7% F's. How many D's were you going to have? About that many. That was forced too, 15% D's. So let's think about what that means for the student's knowledge in a subject like math. If you have an F, you have a lot of gaps in your understanding of math, concepts, skills. If you have a D, you still have quite a few gaps. C, better, D, etc. But what happens to the F's? Well, the F's are going to be sent back to the curriculum again. They're not going to be promoted, and they're going to start over. So they have a chance to fill those gaps because they're going to see it all over again. What about those D's? They're not going to be going back and starting over. They're going to be promoted. And if they're going from one curriculum in math to the next, they're not going to see the same thing. There's a presumption that they have what they need to build it upon that. So what's that going to do? What's that going to force in this system? One would presume that over time, those D's are going to be less capable as more and more curricula put at them with an expectation of knowledge of all the gaps. A lot of those D's are going to turn to F's. And you're going to have, just by the very system we have, a rising fraction of students with each promotion, with each new year class as we go forward, they're going to be not at competency level for that grade, right? That would make sense. That's sort of the basic model here. And that's, in fact, exactly what we see. And we have seen it for about 100 years. This is how it always works. These are data from California from 2003 through 12. You can see what you'd expect if the theory that I put forward is true, that you start, grade levels are along the axis you can see along the bottom there. and then you can see the percent competency, and you see this downward function. With each successive grade, a lot smaller and smaller fraction of students are actually performing in math at grade level. And you can see the big drop, the slope really drops precipitously at 8th grade. And there's a lot of thoughts that maybe the reason for that is it's a confluence of the two things you need the most in 8th grade for algebra. Be able to know the quantitative background, but you have to be able to read too. And if you're not good at either, you really hit the wall in Algebra 1. And we see that because about half the students in the nation don't pass Algebra 1 the first time they take it. This is California. You could do this anywhere and you can see the same function. Slope may be a little different, but the trend is exactly the same. So, is this a big problem? You betcha. If you look at this on economic impact on the nation, as McKinsey did, you'll find that it impacts the nation to the tune of over $1 trillion a year, not only in the costs of addressing this, but also the revenue costs on as far as underemployed people. It goes on and on and on. It's just a huge problem. And it's such a present problem that there's a presumption at this point that it's actually keeping the nation down in sort of a state of permanent recession. If we could get past this, we could actually do things a lot better. We've tried to deal with this on at least a half a dozen occasions since we began letter grading and this whole system at the turn of the century. And we've called this problem by different names through that whole period too. Most recently, we call it the achievement gap. The most recent effort to address it was No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. We poured a boatload of money into this, making class sizes smaller, improving teacher training. We went through this whole list of things that one would presume might impact this. But an analysis of the achievement gap by the National Center for Educational Statistics in 2009 and 11 declared that it hadn't changed much. And in fact, Education Week wrote an article in 2011 saying it hadn't changed much. And if you looked at Education Week last week, they just said it again. The achievement gap remains. So we've done our best. We've kind of tinkered with this, trying to get this thing fixed. We haven't. And maybe the reason is because what we built in 1900 is the same thing we have today. The basic system is the same, and maybe it's the system itself that we have to be thinking about. Maybe it has nothing to do with how hard we work at this. It has nothing to do with our students not trying hard enough. Maybe it has to do with the fact that the very system itself forces this to happen. So what am I saying here? In a lot of senses, I think you can summarize the position I'm taking as the system we have really is a one-size-fits-all system. That's the intention of it. To be efficient, to get through the needs we had when we had 3.7 million immigrants, we reduced the system into something that could be efficient by treating everybody the same way. And it works pretty well. I mean, our education system is still the envy of the world, and it was for a long time. It's not so much now, but it was then. Everybody pointed to us as a way it ought to be done, and I think it was true, no doubt about it. But things have changed. The technologies that were available in 1900, we have new ones now that potentially we could address this in a somewhat different way. So my thesis to you, my proposition is that if one size fits all is at the heart of this, or at least a portion of the problem, what if we swap that out and do personalized learning? What if we inject personalized learning into the system in some manner? We might be able to affect some more substantial change in outcomes and student success. So some of you are going, oh God, he's going to talk about personalized learning. I so don't want to hear this again because there's always people talking about that. And I apologize. And so I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible. If you put in the term personalized learning into a Google search, you're going to get, I did it last night, I got 42 million returns, right? And if you go through the first couple of pages, you'll be astounded at the stuff that comes up. It's not only stuff you'd expect or you might think personally is personalized learning, but things that you can't imagine are personalized learning come up, like the color, every student having their own colored workbook as personalized learning, and it's sold as such. I'm not talking about colored workbooks. Let's look at some of the definitions that are out there. If you go to Wikipedia, that place of all knowledge, you'll find that personalized learning is defined as tailoring a pedagogy curriculum and learning environments by learners or for learners in order to meet their different learning needs and aspirations. That's pretty good. And here's what our U.S. Department of Ed says personalized learning is. It's adjusting pace, individualization, adjusting approach, differentiation, and connecting to the learner's needs and experiences. I like that one. And that's, from this point forward, the presentation I'm about to get you is assuming that's what we're calling personalized learning. And the designs I'm going to show you for the technology I'm about to show you is working with that knowledge as well, that sort of approach. So, who am I? So I work at a nonprofit project called the NROC Project. We have been around for 13 years. We are unusual in so much as we work with both secondary and post-secondary instructors and administrators in the US, nationwide project. We are also unusual because we're a nonprofit project. We are all about the mission we're seeking. Right from the beginning, one of the things we focus on is finding new ways to build digital materials and new business models for getting it out so everybody can get access to it. As you heard, we've been funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we still are. Bill and Melinda Gates, the Hewlett Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, but we're also supported by institutions that are part of this project, academic institutions across the nation. They support us with membership dues that pay the operating costs so we can keep this thing moving. So right at the beginning, we were an open educational resource provider. Everybody know what OER is, Open Educational Resources? None of you. And so if you go out to the web, you'll find places in which you can find resources that are free to be used and remixed. They usually go under Creative Commons license. The first in the nation to put that site up was MIT. You can get the MIT materials at their website. We were the second. We were funded by Hewlett to do this, especially for secondary. And so you can find our stuff at a site called Hippocampus. We've also been, in most recent years, our membership membership guides our project. They tell us what they want. So educators, just like yourselves, guide this. And they have guided us in the direction of thinking about personalized learning and college readiness. So I'm going to reiterate, we are not a vendor. And so if I sound like McGraw or Pearson, I apologize. We're not McGraw or Pearson. We are a nonprofit project. We are an academic colleague of yours. This project is guided by your needs, and we work for you. So we'll start there. So one of the ways this works, if I get feedback from you all on what you're going to see today, and Angie, my colleague, and I would like to hear back from you because that's how this works. As you tell us what works and what doesn't, we change things going forward. This thing has grown over 13 years. We have over 100 institutions. About 20 of those institutions, some are small, many are very large. We have 20 plus of the State Departments of Education that are members of the NROC project, lots of big systems. Our members serve about 6, 7 million, maybe more students in the US. And so our members are really a good cross-section what's going on here in the US. And so as they speak, so speaks sort of the professional educators in our country. So we listen to them. Over the years, we have been guided by our membership to build a few things. The first thing our secondary members wanted to build was an Algebra 1 program, multimedia-based for the nation, and we did. Because, as you all know, that's one of the places in which the failure in math begins. Algebra 1 is a huge failure spot. On the heels of that, we were directed to build a developmental math program for the nation, and we did that too, multimedia-based again. And most recently, we built a developmental English program, which was finished in beta in January this year, and it's been out in pilots, and we are just releasing it in its final form this month for all of our members. Again, it's a multimedia-based approach to developmental English, an integrated approach, reading, writing's brought together, contextualized, scaffolded. It's very cool. It works very well. So you can see our stuff as an open resource at Hippocampus. It's our open site. It's the manifestation of our commitment to open access. Oops, go back. And I invite you to go out and take a look at it if you haven't used it. There's not only our stuff there, but we bring in collections from across the country. We have a good relationship with Khan Academy. We have all of Saul's stuff. And we have another, gosh, almost a dozen collections. We've gone through our editorial process, so we're confident they'll be useful to you. But I'm going to talk about today is Ed Ready. Our members decided that while these programs of study we were making were useful, what they really wanted was a turnkey solution for college math and English readiness. A system that they could put into their existing infrastructure that would assess a student's math readiness within context to their aspirations. If they're going to one college or another, or one program of study or another, where math readiness was differently defined, right? And so with that, you know why we did this and why they chose to do this. It was this problem, that college math readiness is a major issue in the US, and so our membership moves in that direction 4 years ago. So the intention around EdReady was to build something that would get students through the process of math and English readiness in a timely manner so that they wouldn't waste time and money. Not surprising. Increase the fraction of students that came into college ready to go. We worked on the design and sort of iterative development process for 3 years. We got out a beta in 2013 summer. We tested it around the nation in 13, 14 states. We locked up final code in April in 2014, and you can go to the web and see this right now. So if you punch in edready.org, you're going to go to that landing page. Just like Hippocampus, this is intended as an open resource for every student in the US. Independent of where you live in the US, if the students at the robotics table are going to be going to college, and I bet you all are, you can go to EdReady, and it's going to see your zip code, and it's going to ask you what school you're interested in attending, what college. And you can check off the ones that you're interested in attending, or anyone. If you want to go to Stanford and it's not in your, you just punch in Stanford, it'll come up. And then what it's going to do is it's going to know that that's your intention. And so all the experiences that the student has from that point forward are built around the schools they're interested in attending to make sure they have the math readiness to be able to avoid remediation when they get there. Yeah? That's available for everybody. But we built this for our membership, academic institutions much like yourselves that wanted this thing to work on campus. And so we built it with an architecture, a software architecture that was really flexible. You can change the academic goals very easily. It's able to do it in a minute or a few minutes. You can change the scope of the curriculum you put in this really easily as well. We have our content in there as the default content for the interventions a student sees once we ascertain their needs. But you don't have to use ours. We have other collections that have already been correlated, or you can bring in your own. And then finally, this thing quotes a boatload of data. And you can take those data and you can use what you want to use, but you can also change the appearance of that data so you can use it for whatever purpose you have in tracking your students and tracking performance. So, how are people using this? Well, what you'd expect, right? That they're using it for SAT prep, ACT prep, Compass, AccuPlacer, TSI here in Texas, GED, GRE, all those things in which there's math expectations for readiness are being used for EdReady, and they're all in there, and there's existing templates for all those that you just clone them, put them in, and use them. And you can tweak them out, change the nomenclature. If there's folks here in Texas using it already. We're not doing a lot in Texas yet, but we're doing a few. We have, I know, Central Texas, this is their landing page, because every school, every place that's using EdReady builds their own site. It's all customizable. So this is a landing page that Central Texas built. Here's one that is, how do you pronounce that? New Caney? New Caney's, this is their landing page, they're using it. We got several more. So if we had one here at Lee, it might look like this. Lee doesn't have one yet, but they might look like this. And for a student going into Lee, they may, well, among the academic goals you might have at Lee, these might be a few. You might have it for Compass. I know I saw it was still in your testing center. But you might use it for TSI prep, where students are coming in with TSI scores too low and you want to get them to a point where they're now ready to go without remediation. You have a lot of career choices in this campus. And you could use it for nursing to welding to whatever it may be. In fact, we have the top 142 career math prep for careers and pathways in the US are already in there. And you can tweak them out, but they're in there as starting points. You can use it for test prep for the TEAS. If you have developmental math courses on campus, you can use this for your own course, where you can tweak this out to make it appropriate for the course you're teaching here, whatever it may be. It's very flexible. So, a student coming into Lee, you don't want them to see all that stuff. You might have dozens of these. You want them to see the one that's right for them. And so they're going to give them so you're going to have this inside of Blackboard. You can put it inside of Blackboard, single sign-on, so a student comes in, we know who they are, and you're going to give them a key. That key, as they come in through Blackboard and go into EdReady, click on the EdReady link, they're going to put the key in here, and what they're going to do is be shown the thing you want them to see. So in this case, let's just say it's your standard TSI prep, that you know their TSI scores are inadequate and they're going to be facing remediation. We want to get that cleaned up. So the experience the student's going to have from this point forward is around TSI prep. within context, the level of rigor, the mastery you want them to have to be successful. The first thing this tool is going to do is going to give them an assessment. It's a formative assessment that's going to quickly ascertain within an hour what the student's mastery is within the context of this curriculum for TSI. And then they're going to be presented with something that looks like this. They can see at a glance the topics within this TSI prep for which they have mastery. I can't scroll down, this is a screen grab. You see the little green bar there at the bottom? That's one, and there's several more beneath that that are topics for which they've demonstrated mastery in this assessment. And then there's ones for which they have work to do. A few, you see the little yellow bars, there's some review they need to bring that score up, and then quite a few that have red bars saying, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. They're also given a score. In this case, it's a 43 on the 100 scale, 100% scale that EdReady uses. The next click, they see where that score puts them with respect to the level of mastery you're expecting and have set here at Lee for TSI prep. So they are at a 43, but you think they ought to be at an 80, so they have sufficient mastery. They're going to be able to demonstrate sufficient competency in the TSI to go forward and avoid remediation. Between the 43, for this particular student example we're showing, and the 80, you see a series of purple dots, like stepping stones. That's the custom learning path that was developed by EdReady for this student based on what they know within the context of the curriculum you put in. Each of those dots represents a chunk of content. That student's going to go out now and work on to improve their knowledge and retest. First one's on ratios, rates, and proportions, simplifying ratios and rates. They click on check your knowledge or learn, and they come to here. This is our content on this topic. For all the topics, we have comprehensive content for all the topics that you're going to have here at Lee. This one on ratios and rates includes warm-up. It has a short presentation, 6 to 8 minutes, that goes over the exemplars and concepts to put it all in context for the student. It has worked examples. These are actually Saul Kahn's worked examples. Saul, before he had his website, he worked with us. And so all the algebra and developmental math materials he has are actually ours at his website. We have them here at ours. There's about 800 worked examples here that you can see through the process. Practice, review, and there's even, see the top right there, that little green tab, topic text? That's an embedded textbook we built for this product that allows the student to read their way through this and interact with it. So a student goes out and uses this. If this isn't right for you or for your students, you don't have to use it. We already have EdReady correlated to another half a dozen different collections, including Kahn. So you can turn this one off and turn on something else. If you have something that you like, you think works pretty well, you can put that in instead. You don't have to use ours. And you can do that for every single topic, not across the board. You can mix and match as you choose. Student goes out, they study, they come back, they retest, and it's through this iterative process of study, retest, the student begins mastering subjects. They start lining up more and more mastery subjects, and their score rises. And they can see it happen in real time. It rises from now up to a 68 from the 40s, and ultimately they reach or eclipse the goal score you set for them, and now they're ready to take that TSI again, and they're going to hit the score you're seeking. Pretty simple. Kind of brute force AI, nothing too fancy here, but man, it works really well. So, something like this generates a lot of data because we're collecting every click for a student. We give it to you in dashboards that look like this. So this would be a typical instructor dashboard. You can see at the top, that 87, that's the number of students that did the original assessment. That's the cohort. 36, beneath there, that's the median score for that original cohort. And see the gray bars on that bar graph? That's the distribution of those 87 students on that 100 scale. After some time, 85 of the students went forward and used EdReady and improved their score. 60 is, at this point in time, the median score for that 85 students. And the purple bars show how that distribution has changed. Not surprisingly, it's moved in this direction, as it always does. I'm not showing it on this, but I will tell you, almost without exception, you're going to have a fraction of your students that go charging through this at breakneck speed. And they're going to be done a lot faster than everybody else. It's in Lee, I will guess it'll be around 20 to 30%. We'll go through a lot faster. And the interesting thing about that operationally that we found is that now for your instructors, the student-to-teacher ratio drops precipitously after the first couple of 3 weeks of the semester, and you got fewer students in front of you. So you can spend more face time with the ones that remain that may need more face time. At the bottom, you see this really colorful graph. That shows the performance of this 85 student cohort. Each of those bars represents a unit of content. In this case, it's 13 units of content for this particular example. Now, there's 19 default units that cover the whole waterfront, from arithmetic to topics in geometry, stat, and trig, which make up developmental math in the US. In this example, they only use 13, but you can see for each bar, the fraction of that 85 for whom they've mastered that unit. It's a green, yellow, review, red, they got more work to do. You can see these data in this technology also student by student. Every click is recorded. You can see the starting time on task, etc. And you can download these data to Excel or to other statistics packages. You can do multivariate statistics on these data. You can see by student how they did by content area. Again, student name and then the 13 units. There's about 350 or so learning objectives that make up developmental math in the US, and they're all represented here. So if you've got 19 units of content, you've got several learning objectives in each unit. If you mouse over one of these columns, it opens up and shows you student performance by learning objective. It would look something like this. We're open to this for, say, whole numbers. There's 12 learning objectives. You can see how the student did by learning objective. This is particularly useful for classroom teachers because you can see, like, if you run your finger down column 3, you see a lot of reds and yellows. Whatever that learning objective is, I might want to go back and rethink that one and re-present it because I'm losing people right there. So I find this a very valuable tool for classroom instruction. But these data can also be amassed at a higher level too. So superintendents can see what's going on, higher level administrators, the governor of your state can see what's going on with these kind of data. And we've done that around the country. I'm showing you this because, and it looks pretty cool on paper, but actually I want to show you some data on its performance. Since we released it, as I said, this is a national project. And so we released this to our membership in April of 2014, right? 2014, about a year and a half now. The dark blue are the states in which EdReady is being used by institutions, sometimes a few schools, sometimes a whole system. Now, if it's our public site where you could all go, the whole country would be lit up because people in every state's using it right now. But institutional use, where it's being put into the infrastructure, here's where it's happening. The red states, or crimson, are states in which they've done a statewide rollout of EdReady, either through their whole secondary system, post-secondary, both adult ed system. In the case of Kentucky, it's KCTCS, their community college system, and their adult ed system have rolled it out system-wide. Nebraska just came on for their secondary system like last week. And we have several states that are kind of lining up to do the same. So we're getting a lot of data back. And this is cloud-based, so I get to see these data every morning. It's incredibly cool. You could too. So here's how people are using it, because the use cases are really the key here. It's being used for admissions prep, not surprising, but it's also being used if students arrive on campus and they're really not ready to go. It's being used in a variety of ways. We find that a lot of our community college partners are getting EdReady, they use it for a semester or two, and then they instantly make versions and give it to their feeder high schools to get it upstream of the issue. And we're seeing a lot of EdReady use in middle schools, in Montana, Hawaii, and other places right now, getting ahead of Algebra 1. But here's an example. Leeward Community College is on Oahu, it's in Honolulu, and they were actually given EdReady by University of Hawaii, who was the first to use it. And they gave it to Waipahu, which is one of the high schools that feed them that had terrible Compass scores for the students emerging from that program. They used Compass scores with 11th and 12th graders to target students that they wanted to address with this. And they had an early college math course on, and they did it two ways. They had a 3-week intensive summer course where they used EdReady. They also had a regular semester course. And they covered all the math they need, 3 semesters in that 3 weeks. Right now, they're tracking about 2/3 of the students that go through, that start with a Compass score too low, come out of a 3-week intensive course with a Compass score adequate to go to Leeward and avoid remediation. The third that doesn't hit the cut score actually goes up at least 1 developmental math course, sometimes 2. These numbers are holding up across the nation. We're seeing the same things across the nation. About 2/3, 75% of the students in high school going through this kind of program, especially schools that have been struggling, are getting their students ready to go in either a semester-long course or a 3-week summer course or something shorter. If we don't get them in high school and they've already been admitted to Lee or somewhere, we want to get them in that summer before. We have a lot of community colleges and four-year schools doing that with boot camps. Owensboro, Kentucky, the community college, community technical college, they again had students, they used Compass, who had low Compass scores, who were facing remediation, and they put them in a 4-hour day boot camp. At the end of the 4th day, they got Compass retested, and they're tracking about 87, but actually for them it's about 85 to 90% of the students are getting to readiness at the end of the 4 days, and that number's holding up all over the country. It's not just 4 days. This is a really intensive boot camp. There's a lot of 2- and 3-week boot camps we're seeing around the country, but the numbers are about the same. Somewhere between 75 and 90% typically is what we're seeing. But we're finding theirs. They've done this 3 times. They're hitting the same numbers every time. Montana, University of Montana is a selective school. About top 10% of the students in the state are going to Montana, but they still have, like almost all universities in the US, about 20-25% of their students aren't college math ready, and they're going to be facing remediation. And so they gave students a chance to work on their own the summer before they arrived on campus who had low ACT scores. 86% of the students that went out to Ed Ready for a version made by University of Montana and used it and hit their goal scores came back and avoided remediation. They use ALEX as their tool for doing remediation testing placement. The interesting thing about these data, and much of these data, is how quickly this happens. University of Montana and most universities we work with, they're seeing about a 12-hour median time in Ed Ready to get this done. And so there's a 6-week window in which this occurred. Most students were done, the median group of students were done in 12 hours. And we had a lot of students that did that at one sitting too, by the way. They sat apparently on their couch and just played this all day long, got done with this. We were concerned that what we're doing is having students actually getting ready for a test rather than learning math. So we've been following the longitudinal data on these early cohorts. I'm happy to report that it looks like they're actually learning math. That in Montana and other places, around low 90% of the students going through Ed Ready, hitting their goal score, avoiding remediation, and then taking their first college math course, pass that course. When right now Montana is looking about a B- average. The control group is about a half a grade level lower and a smaller percentage passing, the people that didn't do remediation at all. That's holding up in not only universities, but it's also holding up with our community college partners. If we don't get them in high school, if we don't get them in the summer, you can get them on campus with this tool. Traditional classroom use, I really like using it in Emporium models. Those seem to work really well, especially in community colleges. And we have folks that are really moving towards a co-requisite model with this, especially in technical schools. Our partners in Kentucky are rolling. They started in North Carolina with this, Central Piedmont, but now the community college system in Kentucky is going to be using Ed Ready as a co-requisite tool system-wide. At least that's their intention. So it's been a cool tool. We're getting a lot of data. This technology I like. We're refining the AI in this so it's going to work even better. There's things we can make this that are better. We need feedback from the users, not only from how this tool works with student performance, but also operationally, whether it works well for you. The way it's been used has been kind of surprising how diverse it is, from a variety of different use cases, but also sort of the grade levels, where it's being used from middle school all the way to adult ed. The ones that kind of popped up in the last 6 months were using Ed Ready as a tool for really career pathways and adult ed. And so it's been used across the country where people are building custom versions of Ed Ready, custom goals for just all these different career pathways for which there's math readiness issues. Praxis, University of Hawaii, and Jacksonville State independently built Praxis versions of Ed Ready goals. TES version of the goal was built by Central Piedmont recently. Montana has taken the biggest step in this direction. This is the Montana landing page for Ed Ready for the state. It's, as you can see, for higher ed, secondary, and adult. In the state, like many states, there's an inadequate number of citizens to fill the healthcare jobs that are coming up every year. There's 1,300 unfilled healthcare worker jobs in Montana, and most of those unfilled jobs are in rural areas, so it's a big problem. It's been going on for a few years. And so the governor's office came up with a project to address this called the Montana Healthcare Project. It started 3 months ago. They chose to use EdReady. Every citizen going into a healthcare program in Montana in higher ed, either the community college or the state university system, goes through EdReady first to make sure they have the math skills to be successful, because that was the biggest failure rate. And so when we saw this, we said, man, we better get ahead of this. That's why we convened a national committee a few months ago, and we built in EdReady the top 142 healthcare goals as EdReady goals, and there can be used for you as a starting point if you need to refine it. So I'm showing you all this stuff that has to do with sort of institutional impact of this, which is important. But you all know why this is even more important, because there are a lot of our fellow citizens for whom math is a major issue, and English for getting into college, and they've never gotten past it. They've been stuck on the wrong side of that for a long time, and it's life-changing. It's family-changing. If you are interested in any more about what I told you, I invite you to go to these websites. Angie Smachula, my colleague, is here. She actually is from Texas. She drove here from near Fort Worth. And so we're in the state. We're glad to talk to you about it. As I said, this is a participatory project. We'd love to hear from you if any of this makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. Even more importantly, we'd like to find out why it doesn't. We can fix it. Thank you all for showing it. On the good side, I've been warming up for the robotics team, who I'm really here to see, and so they're coming up next. So hang in there. They're coming up real soon. So thank you so much.